All right, guys, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio. I am your host, Charlie McGrath, 16th day of July, Tuesday. Thank you very much, Gary Hindershaw, for producing the program tonight and for hosting your Monday night program. And I also want to thank Doug Owen of Blacklisted News for filling in for me last Tuesday. I was on a business trip throughout the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa, and I tried to join the program the best I could from a Holiday Inn last Tuesday, but the internet connection was horrible, so I was only able to join Doug for about half that program. I want to thank him for coming on here and filling in for me. All right, coming up here in just a few minutes is the Warren Edward Pollock, who was a regular fixture when we were doing the nightly 2-hour program. I haven't spoke to Warren for quite some time. I reached out to him today. He was available tonight, and I'm excited to get Warren back on. For those of you who don't know, Warren has a very, very lengthy pedigree in the world of finance, especially on Wall Street. He lives in New York, and he has always put out great information on his YouTube channel. And we're going to catch up with him, find out what's going on with Warren, find out what's going on with our economy, and where we're heading. You know, last night I put out a video very late. I was going to say it's early in the morning because it was about 1 o'clock. In the morning, and it had everything to do with our mainstream media. And I want to kick the program off with this topic because it is such a major distraction, and I want to get Warren's take on it after we bring him onto the program here. The video had everything to do with the basically whoring out of the mainstream media as well as our political system. The mainstream media is absolutely, as far as I'm concerned and as much as I can determine, has one function, and that is to serve political interest and to serve special interest, period. Right now, we have this Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin case that is just one more dividing wedge in this country, and it literally sickens me to see the attention paid and the fervor that is being generated because of the outcome of this case, regardless if you feel it's a murder or self-defense, however you feel about it, the attention that is being paid to this incident, to this court case by our media shows one thing to me, that we have not, as a nation, learned any lesson of sensationalism, of shock journalism. We've not learned any lesson over the last, all the way back to O.J. Simpson, all the way back to the beginning of shock journalism. We are led down a path by the nose. I mean, if the powers that be ever wanted to see put their finger out in the wind to see if there was a test case to show if they could still control the emotional response of the populace, this case did it. There is so many issues that are relevant to your day-to-day life, Mr. and Mrs. America, Mr. and Mrs. Planet Earth. There is so many issues that are relevant to the direction we're going, to your the money in your pocket, your bank account, your future, your investments, everything and anything that has to do with your own financial future, your own security. Issues are out there that you need to be concerned about on every one of these topics. The absolute least of which is this court case in Florida. It isn't going to impact your life unless you happen to be beat down by somebody who's been whipped up into a frenzy because of the political and coverage of the political coverage, the political punditry, and the coverage by the mainstream propagandist whore media. If you're whipped up into a frenzy and or your neighbor is, maybe you could be impacted by this. But the true issues that America needs to be facing, that we better be facing, not should be, we better be paying attention to, are being left by the wayside. Now, to look at some of these issues, and they're too numerous to mention. Immediately the top of my head pops up the control state, the police state. The release of this information that independent media knew was going on from the NSA and the surveillance. That's the first thing that pops into my mind, but it's certainly just the tip of the iceberg. And to cover some of these issues, I want to get on my friend and longtime guest on the program, co-host on the program, Warren Edward Pollock. Warren, great to get you back on. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. I mean, I decided to just join the dark side for a while. I have some friends that are well placed in finance, and I signed on to a holding company which provides services to hedge funds. But really, it's a holding company that has a lot of tentacles out. They're doing everything from finance to agriculture. So wherever they see an opportunity, they're going to address that opportunity. But really, for me, I'm in contact now with about 300 hedge funds, sovereigns, high-frequency trading programmers, just tons of people.
When you say you joined the dark side, you weren't kidding. You jumped right in there.
Yeah, I mean, I figure it's a good exit strategy. I mean, I sort of just rolled out of retirement, and to go back into finance is very surreal, if you understand really where finance is. Nevertheless, it's been very insightful, and I would say it's a ticking time bomb as far as a livelihood is concerned for a lot of people, and it's a time bomb in their pensions and in their savings and elsewhere.
Let me ask you this, because over the last 2 or 3 months, certainly since late April, early May, I've said on the program many times, and Gary and I have had this conversation off air, and I got this impression because of the overwhelming propaganda coming out in the building industry. All right, regardless of anything else, as far as the number of foreclosures and the people who've lost their homes and the decline in the housing market, the building industry is one of the pillars of the economy. I mean, it's one of the things that drives the economy. And going into this late spring, early summer, there was all kinds of optimism, hope that we were going to see this massive rebound, and statistics being manipulated, and as they can be, there have been some leaps forward in the housing sector, at least in certain pockets of the country. But I got the impression, Warren, and this is what I want your opinion on. I got the impression early on like I said, late spring, early summer, that we were going to kick the can down the road a few more years. And I came on the program and said, look, I hate predictions. I hate coming out and saying, well, we have till September and then it's all going to come crashing down. But I really feel that over the next couple of years, 2 years, 3 years perhaps, this is the time that this period of time might be something that you look back on in the distant future and say, that was my window of opportunity to make every dime that I could to get myself in a position to survive what's coming next. And so I've been on kind of that bandwagon that if you have the ability to go out and earn right now, you need to be out there earning.
Well, that was my feeling too, and that was part of the reason, why I went back to the dark side. And for me, I do see signs that the real estate market has improved. You see the stock market improving. Mm-hmm. If you look at places like Florida, for instance, there is a lot of foreign money which is flowing into Florida real estate, and that is part of the boom that you're seeing. Mm-hmm. Part of it is because of zero interest rate policy, where credit is available to a select few for refinancing, but part of it is also a capital flight, I think, from countries which are totally unstable. But the thing is more insidious. I mean, how do you explain exactly where we are in a context where the media doesn't do its job, where there's no reality and no grounding, no beachhead for you to gain hold on to understand where things reside? So where I am right now, I understand exactly where finance resides. I understand exactly where your savings is, exactly where your pension fund is. And I know how Wall Street is kicking the can down the road, how they're making a tremendous amount of money. And it's all transitory. I think that it's good advice on your part.
All right, hold on that. I want to get back into finance, saving, pension funds, Wall Street kicking the can down the road. A story came out today. Goldman Sachs has doubled their profits because of tax breaks and legislation that's been passed to benefit these same too big to fail institutions. We're going to break this down with Warren Pollock, get a look at what he sees happening in the future when we get back after these breaks. We'll be right back with Warren Edward Pollock and more Wide Awake News Radio. Please hang tight. All right, guys, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio, 16th day of July, Tuesday. Warren Edward Pollock is our guest. I've got a whole list of topics that I know Warren wants to cover. So, Warren, you're back in. You're calling it the dark side. I think it's great that you're taking this time, this window of opportunity to earn what you can earn, because I know that you are going to, you're going to take what you earn and get yourself in a position for the future that's coming. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are not. They're seeing a return of the early 2000s and thinking you see the programs coming back on television, buying a house, flipping a house. I'm hearing radio advertisements.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's all dissonance. It's all lies. Right. And the idea is, for me, a lot of the people that I run into, literally, I went to a nightclub that we had an open bar. We hosted an open bar for about $8,000. And in Las Vegas, and the people were about the age of Fabulous Fab, who's in the 20s. So here I'm in the 50s, and if you're in the 20s, you should be leaving. This is your cue. I mean, this is your last opportunity. If the government will let you leave, you should be leaving. You can see how that is for Edward Snowden. He can't leave the country. They revoke his citizenship. He's an unperson. For young people, it's very difficult now to leave the United States. The tax system works against you. Your ability to expatriate, that is curtailed. But nevertheless, if you are young enough to withstand a foreign country and to become a citizen, that's what you need to do. If you're in the 50s or 40s, maybe you should just try to hunker down. And if you had a lot of sense, you would lay low. But it's very hard to lay low when the NSA is collecting just about every piece of information imaginable. And I have a video, which I posted to talk about that. And all the information about what they're collecting is out in the open. And they're using term total information awareness, which is the defunct type of program which Admiral John Poindexter formed. And it's just followed through. The momentum is just complete in terms of having a total police state, including your medical records. And as you see with the IRS, there is no sanctity of your data. There's no ethics involved in using it. So it's just like Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. You're locked down. But everything is interrelated, because the finance is also interrelated with the security state. And not many people, I don't think, are aware of that, because I'm talking to people that have built high-frequency trading engines, and those are finally at the stage where they're cannibalizing themselves. And one of the people I know is getting SEC notices. They're trying to say, explain high-frequency trading, explain how your systems work. And, they're looking to parachute out of there as quick as possible. Some of the
Wait a minute, what is that about? Why is the SEC... He's a developer. This friend of yours is a developer.
Yeah, he manages a software effort for one of the major brokerage companies, one of the 2 or 3 top companies in high-frequency trading. So
and the SEC is asking for some of his technology?
They're asking for his algorithms. They're asking him to explain how they come to trade and all the ins and outs of that technology. And they want to gain visibility into it. And it's really moot, because the SEC is one step behind. Because now with high-frequency trading, it's irrelevant. That's totally irrelevant. The margins are being squeezed out of that that idea, that cheat that these companies are using, and the spreads are down to pennies. There's no liquidity any of the stocks. I've run into a hedge fund which is using big data. And that big data is what the NSA is using. They're using something called probably Hadoop, which is developed at Google and or Amazon. I think Hadoop was developed or used by Google. It's all that technology that's funneling into the NSA. Is all from the major companies which you deal with, Yahoo and Google. And I know that for a fact. And the high-frequency trading is yesterday's technology, and today's technology is big data. where they take data that can't be organized and they look for correlations. And we're involved to some extent in that, but I know some people that are developing systems which scrape everything and then dissect it. So if we do a video, it could figure out based on the words that we're using and summarize that information. They'll score it. So you and I might be a high threat. They'll score our conversation as a high threat. That goes into an algorithm, and that's how they keep track of things such as medical records, phone calls, cell phone locations. And the information that they're collecting is pervasive, and it is defined. You can go online and find out exactly what the NSA is using. And all of this information, prescription drug purchases, medical information, border crossing, itineraries. And they say, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. But, you look at the examples of McCarthyism, and then you look closer to home with the IRS, and there is a tremendous amount to fear. Really, this is what happens. I hate to use the words isms. I hate ism because it's a simplification. But if you have a collusion between a few people that have embedded themselves in an iron triangle corruption between the bureaucrats in Washington and the corporations, you have the selective law applied, you have the rules that you have to adhere to, and most people do because that's all they know is the mainstream media. That's all they know is what they've been told to know. They have expectations. I'll buy a house with 0 interest rates. I'll save my money. I'll get a college loan. I'll get a car, and I'll have a good lifestyle. That lifestyle isn't there for the youth that are graduating from college. That the reality of a free society isn't there. The reality of a republic is not there. And what you have is a security state, and everything, frankly, is interconnected in the overview.
All right, let's get into the interconnected nature of metadata, of finance, and how it's really the pioneer of the technology for this, and the breakdown of anything that is other than a police state that we're heading into. And there's some correlations we can use with a less technologically savvy system like the Stasi police state, and how this is literally a fantasy of those leaders. We're going to be back with Warren Edward Pollock and more Wide Awake News Radio in just a minute. Hang tight. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath, Warren Pollock. Warren, I'm going to be really quick in this segment. This is our longest segment, and there's a lot of stuff I want you to cover. You were talking about the isms, and we talked during the break that we're sold this democracy, this republic, this free market capitalist system, and most people cheer that. And in reality, we have the furthest thing from it. But it's the greatest con game ever because the vast majority of the populace believes that's exactly what we're dealing with. But in reality, the people are cheering their way right to the proverbial poorhouse or to the literal FEMA camp. I want to turn you loose because there's a couple things you said during that break that I want you to touch on. One is the fact that the lure of the stock market is back, but the people that are in the know, they're not touching these retail stocks with a 10-foot pole. And it seems, at least to me, and I want your take on this, that the nation as a whole is looking at 16,000 on the Dow and celebrating, but it's nothing but a con job. And when it comes crashing down, we're going to have something akin to what we already saw in Cyprus, which isn't a bailout, it's a bail-in, which means that your savings, your future will be used in order to try to rescue these institutions. There's not going to be any government coming there to say, hey, guess what? We're going to bail these guys out. Don't worry about it. We're going to go another 10 years with 0 interest rate. The whole game's going to change. And when it changes, when we go off that next cliff, bail-in will be the term that everybody gets to learn about. Warren?
Well, there's two major areas of investment. Retail investment, that's the small person, and they're involved in stocks and bonds. Everyone knows what stocks and bonds are. These are held by pension plans, by money markets, by everyone. But the large brokerage companies and the hedge funds are not trading those instruments. I mean, they might be trading them on a high-frequency trading platform, but that's just for pennies, and they do that over and over again, and that's history. High-frequency trading is done. But what they are doing is they're generating a lot of synthetic instruments in unregulated markets. And that's what they're trading back and forth. And they're also finding their way into in full investment pools and 401ks and everywhere. Everywhere where there's your savings is supposed to be is where these artificial types of paper are. And there's nothing backing those things up except the balance sheets of these companies. And these companies are all broke. So they're backstopped so far successfully by the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. And in any kind of failure of these exotic, highly leveraged instruments, unregulated, they will draw upon your pension plan and also your savings to make good on those debts which cannot be covered because they're far in excess of the amount of collateral that's in the system. So there's not enough savings and there's too much leverage. And what leverage there is unregulated, artificial, synthetic, made up, so that these companies can generate commissions so they can take their cut of the action. Frankly, I would not give any money to a money manager. I mean, these guys have an investment thesis. They'll say buy this sector or buy that sector. First of all, there's nothing now which you can buy unless it's a productive asset which is providing you with life support. There really is nothing that you can buy. You could hold what I would call transitional wealth, which would be gold and silver, but you have to have nerves of steel because that too is traded synthetically and is traded in a leveraged fashion. Now, I thought it was a very good idea to buy gold at $278 and silver at $3. Not such a good idea to buy at $50 and $1,900 respectively. But if you look past the price, the gold is still there, irregardless of what the markets do. And in any kind of collapse, hopefully that money is out of the bank and hopefully that money is out of the country, gold being money or silver being money. Mm-hmm. But there's a desperation, if you look at Bitcoin, there's a desperation to have an alternative because people know that what we are using as money is no longer functional. And they're hoping that this will have some of the elements of money, but Bitcoin does not meet the definition of money. It's just a speculation. But to a great extent, gold, silver might be a speculation, but it will have transitional value, long-term value that you can pass on to your children or relatives. But all I'm saying to you is there's two tiers of investments. There is stocks and bonds, which are retail products. Those markets are totally irrelevant. Don't give your money to a money manager. All they're doing is taking a commission. They're generating a lot of revenue off of your back, and all their investment theses are incorrect because their view is not wide enough. And then above that, you have some hedge funds which are trading, arbitraging the inefficiencies in ETFs. They're looking for differences in price between some of the ETFs. They're using big data to do that. They're so desperate for information that they're using these big data engines, metadata or the same stuff which the NSA is using, to try to get a little advantage over each one of them. And that shows you how ludicrous this industry is, that they have to go to such great lengths to try to find advantage between all these different firms. They're putting themselves out of business. And the only business they have remaining is to issue synthetic products to each other in the form of counterparty contracts. And those are all fraudulent. I don't know how much more I could explain it, but the brokerage companies are not, the large investment banks are not concerned with stocks or bonds. All they want to do is generate churn. And to do that, they use these hyper-leveraged products, which are fraudulent in nature.
So out of Dodd-Frank, out of all the hoopla and all the destruction of free markets in 2008 to present, all the talk that we fixed the problem, at the root of it, right? These synthetic derivatives, these synthetic products are all still not only in force. It is how these institutions are going to bring down the global economy eventually.
Right. I was looking at CDOs. I was looking at mortgage-backed securities, residential and commercial, mm-hmm. from a defunct hedge fund. So I was looking to dissect the value in one of these portfolios from a bankrupt hedge fund. And I'm looking at the paper to see if we could buy any of it. And the paper's yielding 5%. This is the same mortgage-backed stuff which blew up. Mm-hmm. It's yielding 5%, maybe 7%, but the risk is 20, 30, or 40%. So there's been no improvement in any of the underlying collateral that is in the mortgage space. What I'm trying to say to you is that all these loans that are supposedly fixed, they're still time bombs just sitting there, and they've managed through zero interest rate policy to stop that time bomb from going off. See, people right now are desperate to get yield. They're desperate to get income. They need income to live. And there's no way, no place in the economy for them to get productive income. There's very few places. All the income is being concentrated in a few hands. The large companies, your congressmen and other alleged criminals. Mm-hmm. And that means that and a lot of the wealth of the country has been exported so we can get cheap Chinese goods. We imported a lot of Chinese labor deflation. And Ross Perot was right. We had the giants sucking down. And now you're going to China to have an industry that would normally be somewhere like North Carolina or Montana or Louisiana, and those jobs aren't there. So the solution is to have your kids take out loans, go to college, and get a business degree. Like, I hate to tell you, those kids, not only will you have to pay back these loans because there's a bankruptcy law has changed to your detriment, but there will be no jobs for you to have, especially in finance, maybe in healthcare. But there's dislocations, problems in healthcare too. The economy is an absolute abortion, and it's being kept up by financial jiggering. And also it's being kept up by fascism. And those two things are hand in hand. The NSA and finance are hand in hand both technologically and also as part of the total system of an empire collapse. These things are totally connected. The technology is the same. The lies are the same, the lies are pervasive, and the lies are connected. And the technology is connected. And that's why you have Google and Amazon and high-frequency trading technology and Hadoop and all of these other technologies that are all interconnected. And that's why Microsoft has vulnerabilities that they released to the NSA. That's why there's information used to advantage in the tax code. That's why maybe Obamacare got passed. I'm not saying it did from a conspiracy point of view, but it's possible that one of these surveillance systems had information against one of the Supreme Court justices, and that was enough political leverage to have a decision thrown your way, the way of the insurance companies and the concentration of wealth and the fascist state. And the rules for you to follow are there. The NSA clearly defines them. The Domestic Information Directorate tells you what behavior is acceptable and what behavior is not. And if eventually, if need be, you'll be put in front of a board like Solzhenitsyn. You'll be made to sign a document admitting your guilt for a thought crime. And then whatever the crime is, the law, we'll just make up the law and that's your crime and sign on the dotted line and we'll put you into the gulag. Or in a modern economic gulag, we'll make you just an unperson.
No doubt about it, and there's millions and millions of them right now. So that isn't a future that we're looking at. It's the actual factual present. But Warren, when we come back in our final segment, this massive game, especially in the synthetic markets, will this all come crashing down and make 2008 look like a hiccup? And if so, what is your best estimate? We'll be back with Warren Edward Pollock and more Wide Awake News Radio in just a minute. Hang tight. All right, final segment of Wide Awake News Radio on the 16th day of July, Tuesday. Warren Edward Pollock is our guest. And Warren, you described a lot of, to me, very scary things. I mean, it's an absolute justification. At least I feel I'm justified. It justifies me coming on here every night and doing these videos saying, look, nothing's been fixed. We're still being controlled by the thuggery, and that not only are we just still being controlled by them, it's getting far, far worse. Nothing has been fixed in the world of finance. Nothing has been fixed with too big to fail, other than they're even more in control of government and have more power than they did pre-2008. I asked you before the break to break it down as far as your opinion goes on how long they can keep this dance going. And you said you wanted to attack it from the periphery. So what did you mean by that?
Well, I think let's start with the premise that everything is connected. So we have the corporate world that's connected to government. We have an empire which is connected to the corporate world and government. And that empire is globally connected. The power of the United States government was at its apex at some point in the past. And that power extended successfully around the world to provide stability. The power of the government in failure is extreme. We see that Snowden could be landlocked in Russia, with even Russia afraid to buck the United States. People in the United States control of the currency. people in agriculture. These regulators are not only regulating the United States, they're flying out to the periphery. They're helping to manage other countries. They're interacting with the Eurozone. It's all connected. It's part of an empire. And that empire is in failure from the periphery towards the center. So at the periphery, the first thing to fail was the Middle East and North Africa, not an Arab Spring. You saw that breakdown there. And then it migrated probably to Japan and also to Europe. And those two areas are a bit closer into the circle. And those areas are in failure. One from Fukushima, which is a trade-off between life expectancy and economic continuance. And the other is just in financial malaise. It cannot break out of it because this is not happening. What's happening in Europe is not happening in the United States, because in the center of empire, that's a position of relative stability. And that may be part of the reason why the stock market's up and why the real estate is up, because this capital flight from the periphery to the stability of the middle. And in failure, what you had was a very pragmatic thinking way to try to keep things stabilized. You move the aircraft carriers around, you bully a leader, you elect or a dictator, you do all sorts of real politic around the world to keep things stable. And when you lose that ability, when you can no longer fund your empire, it breaks down. And it's broken down in parts of the Middle East of North Africa. It's breaking down in advanced economies. It's breaking down in the monetary system. But those aircraft carriers are still there. And they're going to be used not with finesse of realpolitik. They're going to be used with blunt force. And the security state is in place, and that's not going to be used with finesse. That's going to be used with blunt force. And I've rethought the TSA a little bit. You know, I thought that was a direct assault on my liberties, and really, the more I come to love the TSA after the Boston bombing, the more I realize that it's a two-tiered welfare system. So we have workfare for the people that are the TSA agents, and then we have the welfare, corporate welfare, for the guys like Chertoff that are running these security companies. It's cronyism at its best. These are the brown shirts, the lowest common denominator, the blue shirts of the TSA. And in the hurricane here in New York, they were deployed to the street to knock on doors and hand out campaign literature for the local Politico crook who's now being investigated.
Wait a minute.
By the FBI.
You had TSA agents handing out political literature? Absolutely.
They were handing out both FEMA literature, which was neutral. It didn't say it was Barack Obama's FEMA.
Right.
They were handing out Ed Magano's emergency preparedness sheet, which wasn't the county's emergency preparedness sheet, and they were questioning, right. The TSA agents were questioning why they should be handing out political literature, and no one objected, not even the newspaper. So the hurricane's another story. That's breakdown.
But I think you're right. I think you're, and regardless, I've had people come on here and argue about, well, I don't work for the government, and my argument is, yes, you do.
You do.
Believe it or not.
All the winners and losers are determined by the government at this point.
That's right. So you work for the government.
You work for the government. You work for I hate to use the word communism. And Karl Marx was correct in that in a globalized world, and the U.S. empire was globalized, at the apex of globalization, labor value goes to zero. You saw the poverty in China in these factories where they're committing suicide. In a free market system, your labor value would level with theirs. Ross Perot knew about this. Giant sucking sound. That has not happened for the sole reason that the government, United States government, the empire, is protecting the center of that empire, and they're determining who the winners and losers are. And my friends out in the audience, you are all winners. You just don't realize it. You've all been winning, and are still winning, by this sort of crookedness, but it's coming at a tremendous cost. The cost is the abrogation, the destruction of the Constitution, the total gutting of a republic, and the fact that the news is newsworthy and the ideals are not meritorious. It basically means that you're living in an illusion. You're happy to do so because you have food on the table, even though the price of it is doubled or tripled, because there's plenty of people in China without food on the table. There's plenty of people in poverty. Medical care will become either you'll have access to the top medical care or you won't have access to it at all. For routine care, I go into Columbia Presbyterian and Weill Cornell Medical Center. and I get the top treatment, top doctors, top university. That's not available to anyone else. What does it cost me? $20. What does it cost me to go to the worst guy? $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. There's no sense in the system anymore, and that's what dislocation is. There's no sense in the system. There's no sense that the fact that core inflation has doubled and tripled, non-core inflation, all the stuff you need to live, non-core inflation, gasoline, food. You want to know the price of gold? Well, why don't you take the retail price of gasoline and multiply it by 278, and that should give you a good price for gold, or 300. So it's $4 a gallon. Well, gold should be about $1,200. Sounds right to me. And that's what a currency is. And everything right now is connected, and everything is a currency. Your value to the system is as a currency. Right now, your value is very little as a currency. People are a liability. So your exchange for something else, the very food you need to eat, or your right to live, or your freedom. So you're worth very little in a country which is short on justice and fat and laws, like North Korea. You're not worth very much to the state, and that's where you are to a lesser or greater degree. It's masked because you're at the center of empire with the periphery already in failure. How long does it take for it to collapse? It is a process. I was thinking still in 2015. I remember that was the last. That's when I think people would really start to feel the pain. Guess when Obamacare is kicking in? Around 2015. I thought that would be the bottom of where we would be, because that economically, because we probably couldn't go any lower, but we'll continue to go down the bottom. Things will get worse and worse. People will demand change. That's how you get your dictators. That's how you get your strong-fisted people. That's how you get into wars. And then you have another double bottom. The indicators that we use for determining the health of the economy, maybe the stock market, and that's just a perception. It's an expectation. How many expectations is the United States really meeting for its people? Is it providing them with freedom? Is it providing them with education, which is meaningful, and with healthcare, with the ability to, to prosper and to innovate and be creative? I don't think so. The creative places are in Asia. The creative places are places that are not as heavily regulated. The creative places are the places where the government's pragmatic, like Singapore. There's a whole lot of ways to get to the same conclusion. But if we have 2 billion people in the world that want to work, and we only have, through mechanization, 300 million jobs, where does that leave everyone else? And in the U.S., we have strictly made-up jobs. Strictly made-up jobs. Tesla can't sell cars in New York because they want to change the model. They want to make it a free market model. If we had a free market model, what's your value compared to a factory worker in China? I don't care if you have a college education or not. Your college education is worthless. I'm going to work with people that are alumni of Goldman Sachs, Harvard, Yale, Cornell graduates. These people are highly educated, and they have no value really in an economy that's not rigged. It's just as simple as that. Maybe a doctor might have some value, but what value do they have if the allocation system is for the benefit of insurance companies? None. So we're living in a totally artificial construct. It could be felled by one instance. It could be felled by a terror attack. I doubt it, because the greatest terrorists are the ones that are trying to prevent terrorism.
No doubt. Couldn't think of a better analogy there, that we're being guarded by the world's most horrific terrorists. Yeah,
you're being guarded by the world's most horrific terrorists, and people, you say that to people, and their eyes roll over.
But as the empire, as and I think it's a great way to describe it. The periphery is starting to close in. I do think, Warren, and with only about a minute left. You've been on YouTube for quite some time. You and I have known each other for quite some time, and maybe because you're a bit insulated on the coast, especially with all the money in your region, maybe you don't see it as much as I do. But I am seeing more and more people wake up to the realization that this isn't going to last, and the government isn't my friend. That by far and away isn't the majority, but I am seeing more people with that opinion. Your thoughts?
Here, the government is your friend, because the major employer directly, in many cases, is the government. And I think we talked about 60,000 or so local governments and the pension plans and all the related business that these governments have. It's the only thing that's remaining. And then you have the fascist businesses, which are built on the back of the government. And every business in the United States now is a fascist business. The small business players might find a niche here or there, but they're destroyed by Walmart, by lobbyists, and then the whole. But
that's right.
Free market's not the answer, folks. It would just.
Warren Pollock. Go ahead, finish up.
Well, that's one of these simplifications that would result in your starvation, or at least imprisonment in a factory like China.
Yeah, they're a prime example. Warren, can we still see you on YouTube?
Yeah, you can see me on YouTube. I just posted a video, but they're going to be very rare, few and far between. I have to maintain some distance now that I'm working for the dark side.
You got to keep it on the down low. Maybe we got to get you a pseudonym out there.
But I'm not too worried. The dark side's not going to last very much longer, so that's okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. I'm glad to hear you're at least making some money, and I appreciate the fact that you're able to give us this information. Warren Pollock, thank you very much for coming on here and enlightening us. Guys, stay tuned for Jeff Francis. He's coming up next. Tomorrow night, of course, we'll have Woody O'Brien hosting 5 o'clock West, 8 o'clock East. Hope you can, 6 o'clock West, 9 o'clock East. Man, I forgot my own times here. Hope you can tune in and support Woody. Again, enjoy Jeff. He's coming up next. Have a good night. Peace.